Hello everyone, thank you for listening to Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast, or USB, where we cover Tooele County, Utah high school sports, focused at the moment on varsity football for Grantsville High School, Tooele High School, and Stansbury High School. I hope you enjoyed the previews and the recaps. Thank you for your support, but be sure to get out there and show that support to these athletes, as they're the ones who truly deserve it, and we're just trying to give them a little bit of light for whatever little bit of platform we can provide. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. I'm doing this preview because the schedule got shifted up, and the Tooele High School versus Stansbury High School, that game is actually tonight. So because of that, I want to get this out before the game starts. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? So the first matchup we got is the Stansbury Stallions, who are 6-3 at the 4-5 Tooele Buffaloes. The Stallions have put up 261 points, 1,489 yards passing for 15 touchdowns. They've thrown 5 interceptions. They've rushed the ball for 1,822 yards and 21 touchdowns. Defensively, they have 16 tackles for loss, 13 sacks, and 13 interceptions. Meanwhile, the Tooele Buffaloes have scored 251 total points. They've passed for 599 yards and 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Rushing, they've rushed for 2,637 yards and 26 touchdowns. Tackles for loss, moving on to defense, tackles for loss, 32 for the Buffaloes, 15 sacks, and 9 interceptions. And again, that game will be today at Tooele High School at 7 p.m. You can look on, just Google search Tooele Football Huddle, HUDL, and it should pull up a link that you can live stream that game if you so desire. So this is the first matchup. Like I said, Stansbury versus Tooele. So kind of some of the things I want to take away from this, right? I haven't had a huge opportunity to see either one of these two varsity teams play, but I got to go see their JV teams play, excuse me. And I got to say, Stansbury put a beating on them. I mean, it wasn't even close. The quarterback for the JV, I'm not sure I'm saying his last name right, but number 3, Rutzel, not really sure how to pronounce it exactly. Hey, listen, he's going to be good, man. He's got some serious throws for him. The passing attack at the JV level was pretty good, and I know that they've used him at the varsity level. The one game that I did kind of watch the playback of, they seem to rotate him every other series or something. I don't know if that's a constant thing for them. It may have just been that game. I'm not 100% sure on that, but what I will say is that it's effective. Because, Dearden is the varsity quarterback, I believe, the starting number 4. I could be wrong about that too, because again, I don't understand their system because I haven't had the opportunity to see the varsity team play enough. But here's what I will say: he's a very good scrambler and he can throw the ball too. But I do think with your deep threat passes, I think Rutzel, again, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, number 3, he's more likely to probably throw it down the field. But Dearden's a very capable quarterback as well. So they're really in a good spot at the quarterback level, if you want my opinion. Dearden's very, very effective, and Rutzel seems to be doing a very good job as well. So they could go either direction, I think, and still be successful. But let's kind of look at a few things here that I think are going to be relevant. So Tooele High School has allowed 277 points. Okay. Again, they are 4-5 on the season. They've allowed 277 points. Now, yards against them, they've given up 1,827 yards passing and 10 touchdowns. And again, all these stats come from Max Preps. So if they're off a little bit, I do apologize, but I got to work with what I've been able to find. So again, 1,827 yards passing and 10 touchdowns is what that defense has given up. In terms of rushing yards, they've given up 1,232 yards and 17 touchdowns. So their defense doesn't appear to be strong suited to defend one more than the other. I guess arguably I would say probably the pass, because they've given up 17 touchdowns on rushing. So that, how does that compare? Well, that compares to Stansbury, who has allowed only 127 points on the season. That's pretty impressive. And again, they are, 6-3? Yeah, 6-3. And they've only allowed 127 points on the season. Okay, now the yards against them against Stansbury. Passing yards, they've allowed 1,622 yards and 8 touchdowns. Rushing yards, however, and mind you, this is missing one game worth of stats, okay? But I don't think it was really. Let's see, who was that? That was Cottonwood, and they beat Cottonwood 62-0. So, I don't think there would have been a lot of stats from this, anyways. But the rushing stats for Stansbury is 767 yards on the season allowed against that Stansbury defense, and only 6 touchdowns. So that's dang impressive. And this is important in my opinion because what I have seen at Tooele and the stats that I've looked at and everything like that, they are a run-heavy team. 90% of their play calls appear to be run calls. Okay, so they rely heavily on that run game. Stansbury seems to be very good at defending the run. So that's going to be problematic, I think, for Tooele because they do not get that quarterback involved. And I've said it before on previous ones. I don't know if that's by design or if he's just maybe not there yet, but I'm leaning towards its design. And they don't seem to be interested in trying to change that, and they seem to be okay with their 4-5 record. So, take that how you want to take it, but it's a very, very critical stat line, in my opinion, when we look at how these teams are going to match up. Don't get me wrong, Gritsmaker is a heck of a runner, right? And who is it? Rosser and Britton, I think, are their last names. There's been a couple games where Tooele's had 3 running backs in triple digits on the game. Okay, so they're very capable of running the ball, and this is not a knock at them by any means. Stansbury appears to be very good at defending the run, so you got to have other options. It'll be interesting to see if they've just been waiting for something, because if I'm not mistaken, it is senior night for Tooele, and I'm sure they would like to win. And if you want my opinion, your best chance to win is going to be from a more balanced offensive attack. You got to throw the ball, you got to run the ball. You can't just be run dominant, because I think Stansbury is going to shut it down. That's my opinion on that. And hey, listen, I could totally be wrong, but that's how I look at it. From the offensive perspective, for what they've allowed, Tooele's allowed 40 tackles for loss. But one of the benefits to not passing the ball, you don't take any sacks. They've only allowed 2 sacks on the entire season. Again, this is according to Max Preps, okay? So that could be wrong, but according to Max Preps, they've only allowed 2 sacks on the season. That's pretty impressive. But again, that's what happens when you never throw the ball. Meanwhile, Stansbury, from the offensive perspective of what they've allowed, 30 tackles for loss and 10 sacks. So you do have the opportunity to get to that quarterback if you're the Tooele defense. They do scramble a lot. There's some design runs that are just, hey, the quarterback doesn't see anything and he takes off. Dearden is a very good scrambler. And to be honest with you, what I saw of Rutzel in, I think it was the Murray game, he's a pretty effective scrambler too. So quarterback scrambles is a very real threat. So there is an opportunity there for that defense of Tooele to gain an edge somewhere if they can get in that backfield. But, clearly if you want to beat Tooele, throw the ball. 1,827 yards allowed on the season and 10 touchdowns. You can rush the ball against them too. So that secondary could really be in for a tough night if that defensive line, one, can't stop the run. If those linebackers aren't able to get in there and back them up, right? That secondary could be in for a tough night when they start really getting into their balanced offense. So I don't think that Tooele doesn't have a shot because, again, their runners are very good runners. I'm not knocking them. But I do think it's going to be a struggle for them to win this game if they don't start passing it. And that's why I had their kicker, Wilcox, as my offensive player to watch, because I think he's going to have to kick some dang field goals to keep them in the game. Because I could see the passing attack of Stansbury kind of taking it off or taking off with it and making it difficult on the Buffaloes. So give me just a second. Let me find my graphic, because that's the part of this that I forgot to do. So the offensive player to watch for Tooele, like I said, is number 14, Wilcox. He's 9 for 12 on field goals, 42 yards being his longest. 49 kickoffs for 3,239 yards and 39 touchbacks. So that's pretty good. 90% of the time, roughly, he's kicking it as a touchback. So that's good. 19 punts, 730 yards, and 54 yards being his longest. For Stansbury, my offensive player to watch is number 1, Rich. He's got 34 receptions on the year and 586 yards and 5 touchdowns. Again, I think that passing attack could really kick the Buffaloes in the butt if they haven't planned accordingly for it, if they can't get pressure on those quarterbacks. So that's why Rich is my offensive player to watch for Stansbury. I see him adding to his stat total a little bit more than, say, Ferry with the rushing game. I think Tooele is probably going to do an okay job defending the run. But again, not as good as Stansbury. Stansbury is really, really good against the run. Tooele is not bad either, though. So, they've only had, they had what? 2 games where they kept the other 3 games, where they kept the other team under 100 yards, and then 2 more where they were pretty much right at 100 yards. So they've done a good job defending the run too. I don't want to make it sound like there's some scrubs, okay, but they have given up 17 touchdowns. So that's problematic when you start looking at that, that red zone threat of teams getting into that goal line situation. Are they scoring off simple runs? Is that pressure from the defensive line? Is it there? So that's why my defensive player to watch is number 58, Dixon. And the reason is because he's got 43 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks. And this is for Tooele, by the way. Those sacks, I think, is where he's going to have to make his money in tonight's game. He's going to have to add to that stat total, and so is the rest of the defense. But he's going to have to add to that stat line and really help his defense out by putting pressure on that quarterback. So he's my defensive player to watch. Again, that's number 58, Dixon, for Tooele. As far as Stansbury is concerned, the defensive player to watch is number 23, Olsen. He's got 68 total tackles and 1 tackle for loss. He's just going to have to add to his total tackles because, again, we already know Tooele is going to run the ball, so he's going to have to, I think, step up and help his defense out and his teammates out. So those are my players to watch for Tooele and Stansbury. Again, that game will be tonight at 7 p.m., so if you're around, go check it out. It'll be at Tooele. This is kind of a cool game. These 2 schools are separated by, I don't know, like 9 miles or so, maybe not even that much. So it's almost like a home game for both of them. So it could be a really great environment. I might go. I really wasn't planning on it, but I might end up there just to check it out. I think it's going to be. I hope it's a good game. Because, again, Tooele can really rush the ball. I know I've been talking all year about they need to get the passing game involved, and I still believe that. Okay, but they can rush the ball, and they've had success rushing the ball. Run heavy teams, though, the balance, I think, is what separates them from everybody else. And I think if Tooele can get that involved, I think they're going to be okay. But based off what I saw in the JV game, which I understand you can't compare the two, I do understand that. But there's certain things that you can translate over and you can compare. I'm kind of worried for Tooele, I'm not going to lie. So I'm hoping that they prove me wrong, honestly, more than anything. I'm hoping that I can come back to this preview and be like, man, I was wrong about everything, except for hopefully the players to watch. I hope those young men have a great game. It's going to be exciting. It has potential to be exciting. So if you're around, please go check it out. Support these young athletes. Show them some love. They deserve it just like everybody else. They work their butts off to try to be as good as they can. And, if you can't be there, you can watch it live on Huddle. I know that for sure. So again, just go to the Google search bar, type in Tooele Football Huddle. That's Tooele Football Huddle, HUDL, and you should be able to find the link to be able to stream it live. And it will be through Tooele because it's their home game. So, if anything else, by all means, message me and I'll see what I can do to figure it out for you. But that is the preview for Stansbury at Tooele, and good luck to both teams. I hope it's a great showing. I hope you guys really bring it to each other, because again, this is separated by not even, I don't even think it's 9 miles. I really don't. You're very close proximity. I think there's probably, I don't know how big it is anymore, but there's probably still cousins playing each other or whatever. That's why I was at the JV game, just family ties. So that's the cool thing about this small area. It's unfortunate that Grantsville doesn't get to go against either one of these teams. That could be really cool and fun. But hey, it is what it is. I don't make the schedules, and they're doing their own thing. So check it out, 7 p.m. tonight. That's the Tooele Stansbury preview. All right, so now moving on to the Grantsville High School football game. The Cowboys are going to go up against Juan Diego Catholic High School, I think is what it's called, but Juan Diego, okay? Now, Grantsville is 7-2, while Juan Diego is 5-4. All right, let me pull up my graphic real fast so I don't misread anything. There was no stats available for Juan Diego. Apparently, they don't want people to know anything about him, which I guess to an extent I get, or maybe just nobody's volunteering. Not really sure. But either way, the Cowboys come into this game having scored 271 points, passed for 1,802 yards and 20 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. They've rushed the ball for 1,253 yards and 15 touchdowns. In terms of defense, they have 47 tackles for loss, 23 sacks, and 13 interceptions. And that game will be tomorrow, Thursday, October 17th at Juan Diego High School at 7 p.m. So if you're in the area, please go check it out. Please support these young athletes. They deserve it. They appreciate it, okay? But if you can't, I don't know if Juan Diego has a huddle, but you can look that up and see if they have a huddle. If not, reach out to me. I'll see if I can figure out the link. Now, well, let's get into... Nope, we're just going to get into some stats here. So I was curious, right, because they don't have any stats. So I had to come up with different things to talk about. And what I remember of Juan Diego, they're a lot like Tooele, run heavy. They like to run the ball, especially on the inside. They like to get creative with some of their shifting and their pulling. So they're run heavy. Now, does that mean that they can't throw the ball? No, not necessarily, but it's not their go-to. Okay, so I looked up a few things. So let's look at let's go over some Grantsville High School stuff real fast. So passing for the season, they're 119 for 247 attempts, 1,802 yards, 20 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, like stated before. Rushing, 248 carries for 1,253 yards and 15 touchdowns. Miscellaneous category, they've also fumbled the ball 4 times. Okay. Now your defense has 47 tackles for loss, 23 sacks, 13 interceptions, 9 caused fumbles, and 13 fumble recoveries. In terms of special teams, they've had 22 punts for 1,066 yards, 7 for 7 on field goals, the longest being 45 yards. Now again, Juan Diego did not have any stats. So one of the things that I looked up, because again, I've seen this school play, Grantsville, for 4 years now. And unfortunately, I have to go off my memory because they don't want to put any stats up. And as described in a previous episode, or a previous preview, my memory is not all that great. Been blown up one too many times, okay? So in the last 5 years, I went back to the 2019 season. Grantsville has played Juan Diego a total of 6 times, and right now the series is tied 3-3. So last year they beat them by, I think it was 1 point. 1 point they beat Grantsville. So here's why I think this could be a tough matchup for the Cowboys, but also why I think it's historically a tough matchup, because again, they're 5-4. They're 1 win ahead of what Tooele's got, and they operate very similar, heavy run, right? So what is it about that? Well, let's take a look at it. So far the Grantsville defense has allowed, hold on, let me make sure I got this right. Okay. So far the Grantsville defense has allowed 1,372 yards and 5 touchdowns passing, okay? They've also allowed 1,557 yards rushing for 20 touchdowns. So, 20 touchdowns, that's a lot. 1,500 yards rushing is what they've allowed, with their worst game being against Juab, actually, at 281 yards. I thought it was going to be Morgan, but no, it was Juab. In terms of passing, though, San Juan had the most passing yards against them in that game. So, again, though, 20 touchdowns on the ground. scored against that Grantsville defense. So that defense is really going to have to step up against this run-heavy team. I could see that being a struggle for him. I really could. But the interesting thing to me, and I'm going to divert for just a second onto a different road here. I was honestly surprised to see the passing totals against this defense. That secondary is doing a phenomenal job. I mean, I know Fossen and Bunderston got a couple picks. They definitely got their interceptions. That secondary is doing a phenomenal job. They've only given up 5 touchdowns through the air on the season, and I feel like that's pretty good considering they played Manti, who has Starkweather. And if you don't follow any other pages, there's a lot of people that are really all about that Starkweather kid. And Grantsville did a very good job against him, limiting him to 222 yards and 1 touchdown. And rushing for them in that game was 10 yards and 1 touchdown. So Grantsville really did a good job against Manti. But I was very interested to see that. Very interested to see that stat because I feel like last year, or maybe it was the year before, I remember saying if you want to beat Grantsville's defense, you throw the ball. And I could have been completely wrong about that because I wasn't looking at stats. So assuming that, I do feel like they have more interceptions right now than they have in the past. I could be wrong. I'm probably wrong, to be fair. But I was shocked. Just plain and simple. I've really been shocked by that defense all year long. I didn't think they were going to get the pressure that they're getting in the backfield. They've done a phenomenal job at that, and clearly that secondary is doing a very good job. However, you are going against a run-heavy team, and you've allowed 20 touchdowns on the ground. So we're going to have to tighten that up, and that's why my defensive player to watch for Grantsville is Evan Bunderston, the safety, because he's got 49 total tackles, 39 solo, and 2 interceptions. He's going to have to clean up any misses in that front seven. So that's what I think this game's going to hinge on. If they can stop them from rushing the ball, they're probably going to dominate this game, in my opinion, because Juan Diego doesn't appear to run the ball. So let's look at Juan Diego's stats. And I had to go through, just so everybody knows, I had to go through and I went through their entire schedule and I looked at the scores and yardage against these teams for each one of them and added them up. So I am no mathematician. I might have added a wrong number somewhere here or there. Okay, but it should be close enough that it shouldn't make that big of a difference. All right. But Juan Diego has allowed 1,850 yards and 20 touchdowns through the air against them. Okay. The rushing yards against Juan Diego is 986 yards and 12 total touchdowns. So that's much like Stansbury. They seem to be very decent at defending the run. A lot of those touchdowns are probably in short yardage situations around the goal line or in the red zone, right? So that's a stat that I think is very interesting and very beneficial, I think, for the Cowboys, honestly, because we already know that they pass. They're pretty balanced. I think I wrote it down, but probably on a paper that I didn't keep, okay? But they're pretty balanced. They've got 247 attempts through the air and 248 attempts on the ground, okay? So pretty even play calling there. And so that's an interesting stat to me because if you are going to beat Juan Diego, looks like your best chance to do that is through the air. So, I know Atkinson is a phenomenal running back. He's very quick. He's very shifty, but they seem to be very good at stopping it. Probably because that's all they practice is running, so their defense is used to just stopping the run. But looking at that passing attack, I think is where it's going to be, and that's why my offensive player to watch is number 19, Fuentes. He has 16 receptions, 171 yards, and 1 touchdown on the season. Now, there's nothing outstanding about that in terms of how he's compared to, say, the other 2 receivers that he lines up with, right? However, he was the go-to short pass receiver against Morgan, okay? And he did a phenomenal job hanging on to the ball on some tough catches where he took a shot, right? And I just think, because again, I don't know, all right, because Juan Diego doesn't put any stats up. But looking at the way they defend the rush, I'm assuming they're probably applying an ample amount of pressure. So I can see Van Vliet having to get rid of the ball a little bit faster. So, last week, Jensen had a phenomenal game with just 2 catches. He had over 100 yards because he was able to break free, and Van Vliet was able to have the time necessary to throw the ball down the field. I don't know if he gets that all that much in this game. And that's why I think Fuentes is really going to have to step up like he has before and take those shots and be that quick pass option, for Van Vliet for that offense to be able to move the ball. Because I'm pretty sure Atkinson's going to have some big runs, but I think this might be a tough day on the ground for him. We'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I do see that. I do see that. So key point here. Let's see. Maybe I didn't write it down. Oh, here we go. I want to look at the Juan Diego Morgan game. Okay, so Morgan beat them 42-3. Okay, but here's something that I found interesting. In the Morgan game against Juan Diego, they threw for 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then they also rushed for 224 yards and 4 touchdowns. By the way, Morgan is the only team to break 200 yards on them rushing. Okay, but they were extremely balanced as well. They were 26 pass for 29 rush. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is because that's very similar to how Grantsville is. They're very balanced out in their games most of the time. I know a couple games back, it was very pass heavy. Okay, but most of the time they're pretty well balanced. I mean, clearly, like I said, they've had 247 passing attempts and 248 rushing attempts. Okay, so they're very balanced. And that was the key takeaway that I saw in that game, was that in that Morgan game, Morgan's obviously a powerhouse team right now. I'm not even going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They're a very good team, but they're balanced. They were balanced in that game. And that was the one game where Juan Diego led up over 200 rushing yards, okay, and 4 touchdowns. So the next closest was Union at 162 yards, okay? So, excuse me. Like I said, I brought that up because of the balance and how similar that is to what you see from Grantsville. I really think that could be a very good sign for the Cowboys, honestly. Very good sign for the Cowboys. So, in terms of the offense, let's see. I'm sorry. Juan Diego's given up 228 points on the season. And I don't know if I read Grantsville, so I'll just try to find it real fast and read it to you if I can get my life together here. Oh, man. Other side. Okay. Meanwhile, Grantsville's let up 189 yards. So Grantsville's done a better job of keeping teams out of the end zone. But at the end of the day, you got to make it count that day of, right? So we'll see how that breaks down. We'll see how it happens. I do think my biggest concern with Grantsville is just that front seven. Can they stop that run? Because we already know they're going to run the ball, much like Stansbury knows that with Tooele. You already know it. So, it's one thing to know, it's another thing to stop it. And that's what I'm interested to see. How creative do they get trying to stop this run attack and forcing them to throw it? Because if I'm looking at these stats, right, and I'm looking at what I've seen on, in terms of watching the game, I want Juan Diego to throw the ball. I want my ball hawk of a secondary to be picking it off. I want my hard hitters and the butlers, both of them, Talon and Mason. I want them to be able to hit out in open space, right? Cause some fumbles. They're very good at that stuff. So that's what I want if I'm the defense, and I'm sure he wants very similar, okay? But that's what I want, and so hopefully that front core can really just get the job done at the line of scrimmage. So it makes it tough on them, and they have to do that in order to try to compete. And because clearly, I don't think they're used to it. But again, I don't know. They don't have any stats up, so we'll see. So that is your matchup, okay? I don't have any players to watch for Juan Diego because again, they don't have any stats up, and I haven't seen them play. So I'm sure their running backs have phenomenal numbers, but I can't even give them a shout out because there's no stats for them. So that is the Grantsville recap. Again, that game will be on Thursday at 7 p.m. at Juan Diego High School. Again, I'll try to find the huddle stuff day of and get it posted out if anybody's interested. But if you're in the area, by all means, go support the teams, okay? They work hard, and they appreciate it. So I think that's about going to cover it. I really do. And for Grantsville, like I said, they're 3-3 against Juan Diego in the last 6 meetings. They're literally splitting it in half right now. They lost by 1 point last year, which was gut-wrenching because last year was kind of a tough year, right, mentally, I think, for a lot of players. So I think that was a tough loss for them because they probably felt like they should have had that in the bag. And I think, Van Vliet had a very good game on the ground in that one. He had to do most of the rushing because I think Atkinson was getting stuffed in that one. So Atkinson's probably looking to have a bounce back game after what happened last year. At least I would be if I was him, and I'd be trying to run it down their throats. But again, they're probably pretty good at defending the run. So Van Vliet's going to have to come out slinging, I think, in order to keep Juan Diego on the back burner. And so, yeah, I'm looking for number 19 Fuentes to be that quick outlet pass for him like he was against Morgan when they started, getting things rolling there. And I can see that needing to happen again, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm very interested to see this game. It's the last game of the regular season, and then playoffs and everything starts. So, yeah, it's a big game. It's a big game. They need to win this game because this is just my opinion on the matter. Okay, they need to win this game because I don't think people are respecting them like they should, right? And until you give people a reason to respect you like they should, you got to keep the foot on the pedal. You know what I mean? So it is a big game for them, in my mind, for how they're perceived throughout the rest of the state. Okay, so especially their region and 3A as a whole. I think in order to have that respect, they got to come out here and dominate against a team that historically they're evenly matched with. So, don't give them an inch. That's how I feel like it needs to be played. I'm really looking again for that defense to be super aggressive on the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to get in that backfield. They're going to have to disrupt that running game, and and if they can't, that secondary is going to have to step up and clean it up so there's no big break touchdowns. And I'm sure they already know that. But if you're unfamiliar, now you're familiar-ish. So we'll see. Again, 7 p.m. tomorrow. Look for it. If you're in the area, go to it. Other than that, thank you guys. Thank you for joining me. Any feedback, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you to everybody for going out there and spreading it around and sharing the love, because again, we're just trying to do this for the players. I don't make any money off this. I'm not trying to make any money off this. I'm literally just trying to support these kids, get their names out there. And so hopefully somebody else who has more influence can see it, hopefully, and, give these kids a shot. So thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for sharing it. And, coaches for all 3 schools, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for volunteering your time, sacrificing your time and your families to go out there and try to make these kids as good as they can be. So, yeah, that'll do it. Till next time, guys, we'll talk to you later. Hey, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you for listening to the preview. If you'd like to follow us on the socials, the only one we have is Instagram. Okay, so please head over to Instagram and look for Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast, or USB. That's where we're at. If you want to listen to the audio only, at the moment it's only on Spreaker. Okay, I'm working on getting it elsewhere, but at the moment it's only on Spreaker. And if you'd like to listen to the whole thing with the video, you have YouTube. The channel is Unaffiliated Sports Broadcast for both of those. So be sure to check those out, give those a follow. Let me know what we can improve upon, and let me know if you have any corrections, because hey, we're all human. So thank you for listening. Have a great day.